Hot coffee, Scott.
Okay, so you heard that. We are live here recording. I want to thank everybody that has time today to come and join us on this interview with Dr. Theresa Larson. Dr. Larson is a connection of mine. We've been connected for about a year now, and we've been seeing each other kind of grow here on LinkedIn. But I found an instant connection with Dr. Larson for a number of reasons. I guess the first reason is we both served as Marines. We both served in combat in Iraq, but understanding more about her as a person, reading her book, Warrior, which is a good part of what we'll discuss today. I saw things in her childhood that resonated with me that were similar to, my childhood. And everyone has different experiences, but some of those things were just, pretty amazing to me. And then as I'm a dad of daughters, both my daughters now have graduated from college. They're doing very well. I see my daughters in Dr. Larson, and that is just so rewarding because I really respect Theresa, Dr. Larson, who she is as a person. And I see, so many similarities in my daughters, especially my youngest daughter, who was an athlete. They both were, but my youngest, was a little more involved. And some of the things that she experienced were similar to what I read in Dr. Larson's book. And it was just, we're all people. We all have experience in life. And it was just really cool how I felt so connected, especially after reading the book. So I am thrilled. I am honored to have Dr. Larson join us today. She is the founder and president of Motion RX. It's a fantastic journey that she's on. So without further ado, I want to welcome Dr. Larson. Thank you for your time today and being on my first, or actually it's my second episode, but my first as What's Next Beyond Service. So welcome and thank you for your time today.
Oh, thanks, Scott and Sarah, and for having me on. I really appreciate this platform and the tribe you're building. And well, there's never really an arrival in life. I've learned it's just continuous growth. We got to laugh at ourselves too. It's nice to finally have some humor in my life as well, especially living in the Zoom world.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's an honor.
Absolutely. And I want to thank folks. I'm sure folks will be in and out today. We're scheduled to go about an hour. If it's really cranking and you're able to stay a bit longer, that's cool too. We can see how that goes. But I do also want to thank Sarah Carell. She is the power of story. She's developed that platform. She's brought numerous folks under that umbrella who are doing great work in the veteran space, in the first responder space. They're sharing stories. They're giving hope and goodness to folks in a lot of areas. And I'm honored as well to be part of this, and that she, saw something in me and offered me a slot working with her on the power of story. So this is, it's just goodness all around. So, okay, well, Dr. Larson, I want to go ahead and start this interview process here. If we can start with, going back to your childhood, your younger years, your formative years, and how that kind of shaped you as a young woman as you started, branching out into what would become a college career in sports and then ultimately the Marine Corps. So,
yeah. So growing up, and I know I get to share a little bit of this on LinkedIn sometimes, is I grew up with two older brothers and my father. My father was a single father. I lost my mother when I was 10. She passed away from breast cancer, and was really in our family, like the protector in our family. And so when she passed away, obviously I was 10, so it was a huge transition for all of us. But I don't really think it hit me until later on. in my life. Um, I think when I hit probably high school, college is when I started to really notice like me really missing her. Because I'd actually, when I was little, I saw her slowly pass away, right? It was like a slow, especially with breast cancer. Like I think she was diagnosed when I was 4. So for 6 years of my young life, she'd had breast cancer. Um, but she left such a legacy in like how to live. And that was something that I will never forget and even my dad, my dad to him, she was everything, right? So he actually didn't, he dated a little bit, but actually decided to become a Catholic priest, when I was in high school, because he met my mom when she was a nun, and clearly that didn't work out for her. and and so she brought him into the church, and then I think that just felt like a place where he could really serve after she'd passed away and after his kids were out of the house. So anyway, growing up with my mom passing away, but seeing her live and be so present to us as kids, even with all of that going on, was really powerful. And, to be honest, I don't know. And I'm still learning the journey of what that was like for my brothers. Like I've kind of come to a place where I've been able to sit down with them now and say, what was it like for you? Because they went through a completely different journey than I did. They were there, but I don't remember them too much because it was such a chaotic time with our family. Um, we always had people in our house bringing over food, and that was the benefit of the church at the time too, is that people from the church were bringing over and taking care of us and babysitting and all that stuff. But my dad did the best he could, and my mom, I mean, even though she was passing away and she knew she would pass away, she was still very present to us. And I'll never forget like sitting on her bed when she couldn't get up, and just talking to her about life. And I remember I wrote this in my book actually because it's always stood out to me, especially in really hard times when I'm like, oh, I just want to give up, or I just can't do this anymore. Which thankfully is less and less, you know, nowadays. But she would always say, life has to go on. Like no matter what, you just keep moving forward. Sometimes it can be really unfair, but you got to keep moving forward. And that's always been there in my mind. Um, because there are times when I just want to give up on a project or a relationship with a family member or whatever it is, and it's like, no, just keep moving forward. So she left quite a legacy with my family in terms of just her way of being. She was the one to bring everyone together, and so now I take that on as someone who brings everyone together. But I did grow up with my brother and dad in a very competitive household for sure. My brothers are huge. They're like 6'8", and I'm 6'1", if you can imagine. So I'm a runt in the family, and we had some pretty mean basketball games growing up. But when there was a shift in our family when my mother passed away. I definitely took on more of, I guess, a tomboy role, got more into sports than I was before, and just, kind of started to build my self-esteem based on achievement. I just saw,
Teresa,
yeah, yeah,
let me stop real quick because
yeah,
something you said. When I read your book, I sat down and I had my notebook with me, and I was making notes. It was kind of the geek that I am, but I guess
yeah.
but things that I thought that impressed me and things that touched me. And since you've already said this, I want to quickly talk about this on page 11 of your book, and you're talking about your mom, and as she's close to passing, you would sing with your mom, and your mom would say that she will miss many things to come, but I'll always be with you, inside you, always, to believe in yourself, live your life, and not be afraid. I get goosebumps right now just reading this. That's just so powerful. And as a son whose dad passed away when I was 18, I didn't get that closure with my dad because I wasn't there. My brother was, and he went through the similarities of how hard it is in that circumstance to see a parent, dwindling away, and to be there for the daily care, which my brother, he was in the Army at the time, but he was stationed at Fort Carson. So, I'm so happy. This sounds maybe a little goofy, but that you you were loved, that you were there to be part of her life and to comfort her. And when you look at these things now, you can look back at them, even though they're sad, knowing that somebody loved you and they prepared you the best they could in the limited amount of time that they had to help you be who you are today. And it's, to me, it's very obvious that her limited time with you made such a difference. And so thank you for talking about that, because I was, should I talk about this? Because it is
Yeah.
a hard thing to talk about, but since
No,
you did talk about it,
I appreciate you bringing that up. And actually, that was a really integral, like very important time in my life. Like she really did. She was so gentle and loving and so courageous. And I mean, I remember like sitting there singing to her, thinking that she couldn't hear me. Because I'm not really a singer, but just singing. And I remember her waking up one time and saying that was beautiful. And I was like really embarrassed because I thought she couldn't hear me, and she, like, I remember sleeping in a sleeping bag because her hospital bed was in the middle of our living room, sleeping at the base of her bed just because I wanted to be there in case, my dad needed help, and he would sleep on the couch. And I just remember that was kind of our routine. We would sleep near her and be there for her and change her and feed her and sing to her. And she did the same for us, and she was always, I really appreciated writing this in the book. I'll say that. Like, it was very healing for me. Because I still really miss her. Like at times, especially now having two small children, I like would love for my mom and dad to be here to see them because they're little vessels of us. Like it's just like these little love beings, right? Like that I can see a little bit of my dad in them. And my mom was very mischievous actually, and so I could see a little bit of her. I mean, I'm very much a part of her, but I just it was really healing to write about that. And while it is sad, the thing is, I did feel loved, completely loved. And my dad, it was really interesting to see my dad take on those character traits of my mom in a nurturing way as a man, right? Start to become very nurturing because he wasn't always that way. And so that was something that he also left with me was when someone passes, how do you live? How do you take on a piece of them, to make them stay, sorry, like totally botched that, but like to keep them alive, you take a character trait on of them and you live that. And so this was, he would say that in his homilies later on as a priest, but he did that when my mom passed away. He took on that nurturing quality and loving, patient quality that he didn't necessarily have in the early years. And so
yeah,
I knew, so
yeah, Teresa, it's amazing how we change and evolve, as we grow and we start to look at areas that we need to, build, and areas that we need to be better in. And another reason why I wanted to talk about this, and this is just for the general population here, so many of us come from homes that either your parents have divorced or maybe they died when you were younger and they're not there. And so just kind of a quick segue for the general audience. When my folks split up, I was not happy with my dad. I was old enough to understand what happened. And so the longest time I had hate in my heart for my dad. I didn't want to see him. It wasn't until my junior year that I was convinced to go spend time with him and his wife, who he met at church. He finally figured things out. He corrected himself and he got he got right, right? He found religion, became this person, this guy that, holy smokes, who is this guy? So I was able to connect with my dad in 1 year, and then he died a year later. And I'm only saying this is because we never know what's going to happen in life. And if you have a relationship that's strained with your parents, you need to look past it, because once they're gone, the what ifs, you don't want that on your heart. So I was fortunate that I was able to forgive him and find hope. Now he's not here for my kids and for my family, and but at least I've grown, and I
Yeah.
believe I was become a better dad because my heart was freed to love fully. So okay.
Oh, that's well, no, I appreciate you saying that, Scott, and sharing a piece of this, because I know we have a very mutual, like, common story. And one of the things I'll say as we transition here is that one of the things that's helped me heal from relationships that may have been I've struggled with. I struggled with my relationship with my middle brother. Um, and of course, friends in the past and whatnot. But I've always, one of the questions that I've learned within my personal development and mindfulness journey is going to them and saying, what was it like for you? Right? Like your father, for example, going through a divorce, or my brother going through the loss of his own mother and his father. Like, what was it like for you versus me coming at them like, well, why aren't you doing this? Or why are you like this? It kind of changes the script. And then you begin to see that this human on the other side was struggling, and they had to grieve their own path, and they had to grieve their own way, and they were doing the best they could, and it didn't necessarily agree with us. But the fact that they were able to they made the decision they did. And when you I've learned that when you can come at it from that angle, it softens the relationship, and it
Absolutely.
doesn't, and so that's really been healing for me, especially with my own family.
Yeah,
So
there's a lot of grace there, right? We need
mhm.
that grace. We need to be able to extend that to folks to help enable the healing. So I'm sorry I
Yeah.
interrupted, but those are some things that were very powerful to me, and I wanted to
Yeah,
talk about that a little bit more. I think thanks for being willing to to share with that. So
of course.
I interrupted you when you were starting to talk about your transition into sports and moving in that direction. I think.
Yeah, well, I so very competitive in sports. My family, very competitive in sports. It was like basketball, soccer, cross country, everything. Growing up, we were, like I said, a competitive family. But I ended up playing softball in college and loved being a pitcher. And we played like 80 games a year, so it was a lot.
That's
But I
Villanova,
made,
correct?
huh?
Villanova, correct?
Villanova. Yep, I went to Villanova and was in ROTC there, which is we have a great ROTC program. And so, I mean, I was very dedicated to like performing at my best, although and being the best and winning. And I found that emotionally, I was all over the place emotionally, because if I won, I was the coolest person in the world. If I lost, I wasn't. And if you play 80 games a year, right, it's like, wow, it's a lot of an emotional roller coaster. And I think most athletes can relate to that to some degree. Um, I really took performance to heart, though, as like my identity. I think I noticed in high school, like I got noticed for being a good athlete. I got noticed for being these two large individuals' sister. You know, I also got noticed for being kind and loving, but I built my esteem off of what everyone else perceived me as. And if I didn't get that feedback, or I didn't perform the way I thought I should, then I didn't feel good about myself. So that, I mean, that served me to a degree, but it didn't help me be okay with myself. Like, it served me in a sense that I still continue to perform and live my life and succeed on the outside, but on the inside, it was like slowly eating away at my self-esteem and my soul, if you want to put it that way. And so going into college was even more pressure to perform. And I made some wonderful friends in college. Some of my best friends to this day who are like sisters to me. I finally learned how to dress myself. You'll, those that are on this call will appreciate the fact that I went to a Catholic high school and I wore hand-me-down clothes for my brothers. And like Big Johnson was one of the clothing that my brothers would wear, and I would wear their hand-me-down shirts. And I would get in trouble for wearing those shirts. I didn't even know what they meant, but they were like inappropriate, completely inappropriate. And my dad didn't even know that they were inappropriate. But I would wear those shirts with like a big belt, my hair pulled back in a bun, oversized jeans. Like when I look at pictures of myself, I'm like, wow, that was the style. But yeah, so in college, I had some wonderful friends who were like, yeah, let's work on your style a little bit. So and it was just a wonderful, at college, well, it was hard in a lot of ways. Like my emotional well-being was all over the place just because of my athletic performance and my esteem being established, my self-esteem being very focused on how I did make some wonderful friends.
Right.
And I mean, I was that girl, I was that player. My friend Christy was my catcher. We became best friends right away. And we were the two freshmen on the team, softball team, who would study in the dugout because we were so worried about our grades. And we got in trouble for studying in the dugout. Our coach was like, yeah, you're in a college athlete program. Like you're in a collegiate program. You need to be studied on your own time, not while we're playing a game. And we're like, we're not playing in the game. We're not doing anything. Like,
no, I absolutely remember that. And I also remember another, it's on like page 23. And again, this is still early in your book, where you realize that you wanted to play a sport where you didn't have to react, that you would have a little more control in what you were doing. And that's how you found softball and became a pitcher. And I understand that. I played football and pole vaulted. And,
nice.
I was average with football, but I excelled in pole vaulting because there's no reacting. You're the person that's controlling your destiny, and it's a very different type of sport. So how did that help you with, the things that you were just talking about self-esteem, being in a sport where you could kind of,
control
blaze
it
your way opposed to what you were experiencing in basketball?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So I, even to this day, I really enjoy, and I want to make sure y'all can hear me because my AirPods just.
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, these just died. So thankfully we have backup. So I played basketball in high school, but I found that the pressure of it was, I made the varsity team and then was put on the freshman. I was kind of playing all three teams as a freshman in high school. And I just found though that I was the comparison to my brothers who were like my oldest one was a basketball star. And just I didn't really love basketball. My dad loved it. But I just found myself not enjoying it. And when I got to softball, there was I don't think I knew that if I controlled the game, I would get better, but I just liked the fact that I was outside. I was in the dirt, and I had control. Like I was pitching the ball and I had control over the game. And I always developed a really good relationship with the catcher. It was a very a very nice, it's like a game within a game.
Right.
And everything else, I wouldn't even pay attention to anything else going on but what was, her and I were doing. And that was really nice. It was simple. And then I think that in high school, it was almost like a peaceful time. It was a more peaceful game for me. And I also dominated at it, which helped in high school.
Right.
Like I did really, really well. And I got a lot of success from it, which means that I, got more attention from it.
Sure.
Which means I got a college scholarship for it. And But beside all that, I did like the fact that it was outside and it was one focus, right? I could control the ball, and it wasn't, and I was in a very dominating position as a pitcher. Like, you can dominate, and you can also, if you lose a game, you're also the fault for losing the game, which I found when I got to college.
Yeah.
But it also taught me a lot about self-discipline, because what I found was that the pitcher, like, the team is created during the season, right? But the pitcher and your development as a player is developed off season. So I really put in a lot of time and energy to studying my sport, studying my trade as a pitcher, and going to the top coaches to learn how to be the best. And so I traveled quite a bit. I did travel ball. I went and lived in Connecticut during one of my off seasons at college to, like, basically learn from one of the Olympic pitching coaches.
Wow.
And I just learned, I learned how to be a really, really good pitcher, and be really focused and very disciplined and very patient. And it also taught me how to be very reserved with so everything going on inside of me, even though I may feel stressed or feeling a little out of control, like, I had to be calm and cool, right?
Right.
No matter what, no matter how, if the bases were loaded, and it's the seventh inning, um, I had to learn how to be calm. And that served me as I went into the Marine Corps, you know, um,
That's absolutely what I was getting ready to ask you, was exactly that. How did that help you as you transition? Now, obviously, you were an ROTC, but you transition to your time as a Marine officer, and you wind up becoming a combat engineer, which is a huge deal for those that might not understand. What combat engineers do. Uh, they build things, but they also are on the front edge of the battlefield. Doing what they do there, breaching and disabling IEDs, improvised explosive devices. So there's a lot of responsibility as a Marine officer to begin with, but certainly as a combat engineer, people's lives are more readily at stake and at play than if you're a logistics officer, doing a lot of the functions that I perform, outside of being in combat. But so how let's if we could let's I started asking you questions, but this is kind of a free form anyhow. But
yeah.
so yeah, let's I'll give it back to you so we can talk about this for time's sake, transitioning into your time as a Marine, how that went, how that transition went.
Well, the transition, I mean, it was, being an athlete to the Marine Corps wasn't a huge transition, especially having the brothers I did. One of them was enlisted and the other was an officer. So I got, two different sides of what the Marine Corps would be like. Um, they both were not women, but, like, at least they gave me their 2 cents.
Sure.
Um, and so but with that too, and, being an athlete there, when you hold in all of that emotion and try to just be reserved all the time and appear to be what, quote unquote, perfect, have it all together, right? That did serve me as a lieutenant. I mean, I was the lieutenant that my guys would come to and ask for fitness advice, health advice, business, or not business advice, but, just job advice, thankfully. But I also struggled internally. I continued to struggle internally. And I don't want to leave that out, because while the story, if you read Warrior, or if you look at my story on the outside, you're like, wow, that lady did a lot. But it's like anyone else's journey. It's just, it came there. The things that I did also came with a price. Like the ability to lead and not show emotion too much, and just kind of suck it up and deal with all the different kinds of personalities and people telling you what to do. Like, I stuffed that all down, as I, like, when John McCaskill and I talk, like, I stuffed it down into the basement, and then that all that stuff that I stuffed down, lifted weights, right? And just kind of continued to get stronger until a certain point in my Marine Corps career when it just, kind of broke loose. But the transition, I mean, I was very competitive, so I did really well at officer candidate school, thankfully. And, when I picked up my platoon, I pulled up in, like, a big red truck, my brother's big red truck, because I think my car was, like, in the shop. So I pulled up, as you can imagine, in this big red truck in front of my platoon barracks, day one, and it said Big Bob on the license plate, which is not me. That's my brother, Big Bob. And I step out, the Marines are like, whoa, new lieutenant, And so from that day forward, I actually had a really good relationship with the majority of my platoon and the people in it.
Right.
Like, I mean, my safety briefs would, go down. I think I remember the first safety brief I gave. Um, I was like, okay, so make sure that if you're gonna drink water. I had like a big jug of water and all the other things. And they kind of all looked at me like, yeah, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I remember, the relationship that you built. I think you had two chiefs, right? And I, the second one, I think you had longer. And just the interaction and the sacredness of that relationship. I mean, that's
Hmm.
the way it should be. And that was good to read. It was very, very cool to see how quickly you figured that piece out. Because as a junior officer, a lot of times you learn the hard way.
Yeah.
And in life you do too. But and maybe your brothers clued you into that. I can't remember, but it seemed like you were, you're smart, so maybe that's what it was. It didn't take you long to figure that out, but you relied on them, and they respected you, and that's, you know, some folks have an issue with women in the military, or in a combat role or whatever, and yeah, that's a whole other topic, I guess. But you know, I think you taught them respect, but you led by example, and that's what I think caused a lot of those folks to realize who they had as a lieutenant. So
Well, it was so my brothers, my older brother was a pilot, so he had a different perspective on leading. The other
right,
one was enlisted, and he kind of gave me the down low of a better way of being as an officer,
right,
um, which was basically, get them the training they need. Like, that's the important thing. You as an officer need to advocate for them and get them the training they need. And so that was, and then don't pretend like you know it all. Like, you're coming in with a college degree, but no hands-on experience as an engineer. So make sure that you learn from them too. You get your hands dirty, which was, basically the way I was raised. Like, get
right,
your hands dirty. I chopped wood. I had to, you know, collect farm fresh eggs and mow the lawn and rake leaves and all the kinds of things when you live on a little farm. And so I wasn't afraid of getting my hands dirty at all. And so that's kind of how it started, was the platoon guide, especially, and the platoon sergeant, and my gunny. We all, like, I told them, right, like, I want to get involved with the Marines right away, and I need you to help me understand them and build a good relationship with them, kind of like catch your pitcher, right? Like, we help each other, we make each other look good, but not just look good, like, have an effective team. And so, while I didn't know all the engineering ins and outs, because what is 3 months of officer engineering school, like, yeah, you learn how to bang some nails and look at blueprints. But there's more to that. There's definitely, I think I fell
well,
asleep in a lot
absolutely.
of my classes. That's another story. I didn't sleep enough. But gosh, I had some funny stories at engineering school, which I think I put in the book, some of
Oh,
them.
you did, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I definitely did not graduate at the top of my class, but I had the biggest heart. So, and no one will forget me at engineering school. But I definitely, the platoon that I had was like a family. And so that was kind of really, our little family. Like, I would do anything for them. And I felt the same for them, about they would do this anything for me. And so when we were preparing for deployment, it was like, well, nothing else matters than deploying with these men and women, right? Like, whatever is going on internally to me, just push that aside, because the troop welfare and the mission accomplishment, like, that was the most important. And
Right.
so, while I just, I think one of the biggest things too with running a platoon was like, okay, I'm 6'1" and I'm I want to be just as fit. Like I really forced myself to be just as fit, if not more, and just kind of more on top of what I needed, what kind of training I need to get the Marines to help them be successful.
Right.
So that was really where I kind of really took ownership. However, all the other stuff, like the pressure I put on myself, really, and the external messages I was getting from people outside of my platoon, I took those on a little bit too hard. And it kind of fed into this, helped me lift the weights in the things that were going on internally.
Right.
That was that analogy, that lifting the weights, for those of you who are just coming on, means whatever esteem issues I had going on and things I wasn't dealing with and I was just internalizing, basically we're getting stronger. So
Well, Theresa, from reading your book and from seeing, where you've come to where you are now, it's very, to me, it's very easy to see that you have a heart of a servant leader. And, that's, I think, what a lot of folks are attracted to is they see how genuine, and people always talk about, be authentic, be genuine. I mean, that is you. I mean, when I think of folks I'm connected with on LinkedIn, I can say without a doubt, you're one of the most authentic. What you see is what you get people, and you lead that way too. You lead with your heart, but you also lead with your mind, and you're able to, get folks motivated to find, that thing that maybe they were missing. You help, you shape the battlefield for them. So, as you're a Marine, and you were having the struggles that you talked about in your book, and you got to a point to where you had to make a decision. You were in combat for in what, Fallujah. You were running convoys. You were pulled aside by the CO, I believe, to come with him and to handle a female prisoner. And I thought that was a very interesting dynamic in what you talked about and how that played out. But can you share with us,
yeah.
that the point to where you were struggling with, do I stay a Marine? Can I stay a Marine? What do I need to do for myself to be
Yeah.
able to, move forward?
Well, that was a really powerful time. So one of my jobs, besides being an engineer, um, basically convoy commander, platoon commander out there, and doing, being in combat before women were even acknowledged about being in combat. This was back in 2005. Like I actually had to convince our CLB 8 commander that I'm going to be with my Marines no matter what. Like you're not going to sideline me just because I'm a woman. Like I've been training them, so I'm going to go out on the missions. But one of the other jobs I did was a female insurgent escort. So when the Delta Force or SEALs would capture a woman insurgent, they didn't want any men touching them, essentially. So because I was the tallest, most intimidating woman on Fallujah, it's like, we're gonna take that lady. Let's have her guide the female escort. So the regimental commander, I knew him from like the chow hall. Like we would go and have breakfast together, and I met his team, and so I think I just developed a relationship there. And he was like, I need you to help me when we escort female insurgents, which happened to be in the middle of the night. So in the middle of the night, sometimes I would get a call and I would go. They'd bring the female insurgent into our Humvee, and then we would take her back to the center of Fallujah, and where I don't even remember now. It's been so long, but I think it was the mayor of Fallujah would
Right.
come and then talk with the regimental commander and then take the woman back to her village. And it was just, again, like I was briefed on what was going on, but only to a certain extent, right? As a junior officer, basically I was just like, just stand there and touch her and don't be weird and just make sure she's okay. Like that's all. So, but what I did experience though was this humanness in that interaction. this young woman, who wasn't married yet, and who I'd seen other women like her basically in the back of vehicles being carted around, right? Fallujah, but young woman, very small compared to me. She probably came up to like my belly button, and here I am, like standing over her. She's blindfolded, and then she takes off her blindfolds and like looks up at me and spits. And I know that I didn't take that personally. It's just like, here
Right.
she is, with people she doesn't know in the middle of the night. And then we sat down and didn't say anything to each other, but just kind of like would look at each other every once in a while. And I just, she's a human being. Like I could be her, she could be me, right?
Right.
She's technically our enemy, but she's not. She's a human being, and she's caught up in this war, like all of us are.
Right.
And so she's someone's sister, someone's daughter, potentially future someone's mother. And it made me like, that mission really humanized war for me,
Right.
more so than any other mission I'd been on.
And
Because a lot
Teresa,
of times, yeah,
yeah, I remember, my time in Iraq when I went in 2003 when we kicked the door open, and all of the convoy briefs were moving fast. You're going to see folks on the side of the road. You're going to see young children begging for food, but you just got to keep going. You can't stop. We don't want to draw these folks into the convoy and run the risk of, running people over, injuring or killing folks, and then, obviously the press that would come with that. So it was you don't do. And as a dad, my kids were very young when I was in Iraq, and going by and seeing this, it's like burned into my mind. This young girl who was probably my oldest daughter's age, holding her little brother. I'm assuming that's who he was, who was about my youngest daughter's age. And it was so hard just driving by those kids who were destitute, who were in rags, who were filthy dirty, and they're holding their hands out. They're doing this. They want, they know we have food, and geez, that was just so hard. It just, the human element, right? That was, I'll always remember that. And, like a dad wanting to, you know, share a story with your kids, I felt so compelled to figure out a way to share that with them when I came back, but they were just too young to understand. And, my youngest doesn't remember, but my oldest daughter remembers me sharing that with her, and how it, how she saw how that impacted me. Even as a little girl, she saw the emotions that, I carried with that part, the humanizing of that. And that's, not everyone sees that, right? But it's there.
no,
So,
it is. And that's the beauty. I mean, that was the beauty in it. I was able to actually have a little bit of a connection there and see the war from a different side. And
right,
that's the thing, is, if I think the other day on Clubhouse, this is a little bit of a small tangent, but just it goes into what we're saying here, is that um a guy was asking, like, why do you do this mindfulness work? Like, we got to really we need to stop why war even happens. And I was like, well, that's a big ask. Yeah, I'd love to stop war, but mindfulness, we're teaching mindfulness to a soldier, we're teaching mindfulness to a Marine, so they can see that human side and actually, like, be more present before they pull the trigger or before they just react, right? Like, war is there, and I would like it for it not to be there. But if we can make the soldier and the individual more present to the life that's going on and more aware, then there may be less casualties, right? And there may be more connection happening and more peace happening. And so as a young lieutenant in that experience, it happened a few times where I was with a female insurgent. But it did impact me considerably.
right,
Like, and it made me realize I'm doing something very important, right? Because wars actually can begin because of women being taken, right? And women and children in that um, in that country are, in some areas, are property.
Right.
So the fact that this woman was being sent back to her city, hopefully could stay alive, right? We hope, was a big thing, like a really big thing. If she wasn't, and she was actually handled by men and kept, that would be a huge problem. And so, since then, well, I did get out. I've read a lot of Gail Limon Simac's, Simac Limon's books, Ashley's War, The Daughters of Kobani, and just kind of seen the other side of the war, such as the woman that I met. And so that's been really powerful.
Right. You mentioned the mindfulness, what you're really big into now. The other part of that, I think, as a leader, is humanizing things is critical. Whether you're a leader in the Marine Corps or in business, and having empathy and being able to understand the human side of things, because we're not robots, right? Everyone's got, they have family problems, they've got health issues. There's a way to handle all those things, but it's important when you're the gal or guy in charge to have that as a resource, an
Yeah,
arrow or two in your quiver, to be able to understand, right? That folks are going through difficult times. And so I'm going to, just for time, I'm going to kind of segue into something here. Because when I was reading your book and you talk about your personal struggles, you had an eating disorder that it was extremely challenging. And I'll be frank, I remember, I've never known anyone, at least I may have known them, but not known they
yeah.
struggled with this issue, because just like you, I'm sure they were hiding it from folks
Mhm.
for various reasons. And I put myself on the other end, being either your XO or your OPSO or your commanding officer or a regimental commander. How would I have reacted then compared to who I am now? I don't know. I hope that I wouldn't have been, what are you talking? Come on. I hope that I would have been able to understand the vastness and the severity of what you were dealing with. So can we talk about
Yeah,
that, and then your decision to shift gears and move on to where you are now?
of course. And I know it's eating. So eating disorders, if anyone, for those listening and those who will listen, is on the spectrum of addiction. It's similar to alcoholism, or addicted to a drug. Like food is a drug, essentially, for someone with an eating disorder. And there's different kinds of eating disorders, but the one that I had was bulimia. And so I would exercise and then abuse food and then purge food or just restrict. So, and for anyone who's triggered, just know that there are resources out there, like the National Eating Disorder Association. But eating disorders are very common because you can't see them, right? Like you can't, like I'm not gonna if I show up to work having not eaten, I might be a little slow thinking, but like I'm not drunk, right? Like whereas if you show up to work drunk, which I've had a Marine do, yeah,
Sort of.
right? I think we all have. I think day one, I had to lecture someone about alcohol abuse, but it's prevalent, and the military knows how to serve those who have alcoholism.
Right.
At least they're more aware of it. But the eating disorders is a bit different because it's something that you can't see, and it seems like, well, how is food harmless? Well, food is harmless, but it's not. And so at the time when I was in it, there was a lack of understanding. I think there's more of an understanding now, but even so, in society, there still is this stereotype of rich white females looking to be skinny have eating disorders, or celebrities, but to be honest, that's so untrue. It's like the high performing people who really put a lot of pressure on themselves and who are in pressure situations, who have a tough time handling it, those are the ones who are more at risk for abuse of anything. And so, here I was, this lieutenant who looked the part, acted the part, seemingly could do no wrong, but internally it was, basically I had this addiction, bulimia. I developed this addiction. And so, I mean, that was just, it was a secret that I was hiding. And eventually it became really hard to hide. And it just, it became one of those things where every time there was a trigger, or a situation that happened that I would internalize, right? That pushed down to the basement, I needed to do something with it, right? And so what I knew to do with it was this disorder. That was kind of, I call it in a way like the bad boyfriend. It's like it was always there telling me it was okay, but it's not okay. And I know that may sound a little nuts, but if you've ever had any internal struggle like that, that's, the rationality and the way your mind goes to convince you that this is the right answer. It's very strong. And the more you say yes to it, the stronger it gets. And so, and it's this like very dysfunctional feedback loop that you get. So every time there's a very high or a low point in my day or week, as when this was happening, that was my go-to. And sometimes it would be exercise, sometimes it would be the food, sometimes it would be both. But I found in Iraq especially, so this was going on before I deployed, and I was crying for help internally and in my own ways was seeking help, but I really didn't want it to get in the way of deploying. And my older brother was actually the very compassionate with me, because when he found out, he was like, Theresa, you were just being a Marine. You're trained to be a Marine and do your job. Like, of course you would deploy with something like this. Like, you didn't think it was an issue. And he wasn't trying to make me feel better. He was just like, that's just what you were trained to do.
Right.
So it helped me realize, like, okay, I wasn't just being an idiot for going. Like, I was actually, this was who I was. Now, in Iraq, I was doing my job, but honestly at like 70%, because my mind, when you have an addiction, war is full of ups and downs. Every minute could be an up and a down. I mean, I was sleeping during the day, on convoys at night, convoys in the morning. I mean, it was just so all over the place, but
Right.
that's just the way it is. And so every day it seemed like the ups and downs got even more heightened. And so the need for this addiction got even more intense. And so and it was just a big secret that I felt like was getting in the way of my job. And I would find myself I'd find myself calling my father, who ran a church out in Pennsylvania, was like, and just crying to him because I didn't even know what to say. Like, sometimes I just was like, I need someone to talk to, because I don't know what to do with all this stuff going on inside me, and I can't show it to anyone. Right? I felt very alone. And
Teresa, that this part of your book is incredibly powerful. It really is. And the fact that you were struggling and, as an officer, a lot of the time you are alone. I mean, there are other officers, but it's just different. You don't have that group of Lance Corporals you run around with, or, whatever. It's just, there are less of you, and you're the person in charge, and people look to you for strength, so you have to have that persona, and you have to be that person too. So just seeing your struggle and reading it firsthand, the very personal nature and how much you shared with that struggle, I thought was incredible. Folks that are having this issue, they really need to read your book. And I'm not just trying to pump your book, but it is so meaningful. And for me, something that, again, how would I have handled that? I saw how when you came back from Iraq, it seemed like a clown show. I hated to be that about who you were going to see and how they were addressing this. And they were kind of looking past you, or they didn't understand it. They didn't know what to do, and they shuffled you to this person. And, that whole dynamic of not that it was a hot potato. Some they just didn't know how to handle it, and some
Yeah.
folks didn't handle it the right way. And so, you eventually make the decision that it was time to go. And I know that you spent a lot of time talking with your dad about that. So, what I want to do is there's, I think, the most incredible. There's a lot of good stories in your book, but the one that I had to stop. Even right now, it kind of chokes me up because the meaning in what I'm about to say. I was going to read it, but I'm just going to, I'll just do my best to recollect. And so I'm gonna set the stage for you. Then I'm gonna hand it back to you. So you're out of the Marine Corps. You're finding your way in the path you're going to take, and you're thinking that you're being a trainer and maybe getting into the role that you have now is something that you've felt some passion with. So you're in a gym, you're working out, and you see this hulk of a guy, big beefy guy, and he has two prosthetics, his legs, and you see that he's got a trainer who is helping, but maybe seems a little distracted, not giving the full attention that's really needed. And the trainer walks off. And again, you're looking at this guy and you're thinking that you want to help him. And then your eyes meet. And then your legs start moving and you're thinking, oh, geez, what am I going to do? What am I going to say? And then you say, you were in the military. And, he says, I was a Marine. And, yeah, well, so was I. And you start a discussion with him. And I remember you saying, as you went over, is he going to accept me? Will he accept what I'm about to say? And he was so enthralled with the fact that you gave a damn and that you came over there with an open heart and an open hand wanting to help. And so you gave him advice. Remember, you told him, well, and you picked up the weights. And he was probably like, holy crap. But you moved the weights for him and set him down and you instruct him to put his back against the wall and how this can help him as he'll develop more stability with his legs. You reached out with your hand and you placed your hand on his back. And you took a second and you looked at your hand and you remember what do you remember at that point? Your hands are now a device for healing people. And in that instance, it all became very clear that, wow, this is what I was put here to do, to help people in this way. So please fill in the gaps there.
Thank you for bringing that up, because that is a really big part of what I do now. Is that moment was a moment of realization, like I used to abuse myself with those hands, right? And now I'm choosing to help facilitate healing with someone else now. And so and I remember thinking in the class, because this class it was a CrossFit class, and this guy was kind of not being paid attention to the way I felt like he should, because he just needed extra help. And I didn't want, he's two prosthetics, and I was like, I don't want him to hurt his back. He's already been through enough. Let's. So I went over, and it was a really nice connection, and showed him just how to keep his back straight and do this Romanian deadlift that he was trying to do. And it just felt really good. Like, this is why I'm becoming a PT, and I want to work with people who want to engage in environments like this, but need a little bit of extra assistance to do it right and stay healthy, and make them feel included. Like, that was a big part of it too. So it was a really powerful experience. And then after that, I got involved in more Wounded Warrior. I went and helped volunteer coach at one of the Wounded Warrior classes in San Diego, and then ended up developing my own and partnering with Challenge Athlete Foundation, Team Red, White, and Blue, and all the other organizations I could think of to help, spread the word that my facility I'm working with could help adaptive individuals. And that is really that is a big integral part of my practice. It's the heart of my work at Movement RX. Um, the and the other things, I mean, we can talk about the mindfulness in a little bit, is still a very big part of that. But it is the heart, like working with the wounded warriors, wounded individuals who want to know what's next after rehab. Because oftentimes, once you're done with that year of rehab after a permanent injury, it's like, okay, I can go kayaking with other adaptive individuals, or I can go to, some experience, but then what? Like, what do I do? How do I maintain my fitness and do the things that make me feel healthy, but in a way that's healthy for my new normal body and
Right.
mind? So that was, I've kind of like thrown myself down that path, and man, woman alive, it's been a journey.
Yeah, you're doing such tremendous work, and you're connected with a lot of other folks that are helping you build and expand reach to help folks across kind of a wide palette, right? And so I as I'm talking here, I was thinking about something, and I want to let you kind of talk a bit about where you are now in your journey, and anything else that you want to share with us to kind of promote
Yeah.
Motion RX and things that you've got going on now.
So as a business owner, I've learned the more simplified you can be, the better. So I've learned over time. I've been running my own business since that time in the gym. Well, probably a year after that time in the gym took place. I graduated PT school and then started Movement RX, and started to kind of pursue how to work with adaptive athletes a little bit more. And I was running a boutique physical therapy practice here in San Diego while I was kind of growing this adaptive work. And I'd been teaching for CrossFit HQ, traveling the globe, teaching about movement and mobility. And then they actually approached me to run an adaptive class, like run an adaptive course for them. This was like right when I launched my book, actually. And I looked into it, but ended up turning them down more because I was having a baby and I was running a business, and I just didn't want to stay attached to that brand. I really love the communities, but I just felt like something feels off. Like I'm going to pursue this in time in my own way, but I don't really want to be attached to the CrossFit brand. And that was an important decision for me because that would have taken me down a completely different path. So I kept working with adaptive individuals in my practice and running classes, free classes. Had Magnus, and then I got the adaptive sports grant through the VA, and that helped me also kind of bring momentum to the course that I wanted to create, funded it. So now I get to teach the course across the country and offer one portion of it for free. And then there's one portion that's for physical therapists or coaches or whatnot. And so if you go to the Movement RX website and go under education, you can kind of see the adaptive trainer courses that we are offering. And it's been really cool to just have this heart of our practice just continue to grow organically. Because we do have, like, I advise coaches all across the country how to run an adaptive class, like how to market for it, how to bring people in. But now fitness companies are reaching out to ask for, okay, well, can you provide some content? Can we fund you to create this course for us? Like, it's been nice to work not only with some universities, but also just other um, movement education companies who want to be able to be inclusive to wounded warriors and people who have these permanent injuries. Because I think
Right.
1 in 4 individuals in our country have a disability of some kind, not even looking at like if
It's
they're
a
a
big
veteran or
number.
not. It's a
Yeah.
lot. And so, and then the other, so that's the heart of our business. And then, we were an education business. So we've kind of morphed from one-on-one PT to this education business, and where adaptive is the heart of it. And then the other component for whether you're adaptive or not is giving you the tools to live a lifetime of physical and emotional freedom. And that's through the mindfulness and movement work. So, I decided to partner with John because he really just lives and breathes as a veteran, the need to help people on the mindfulness side. Mindfulness has been a huge part of my personal healing journey, learning how to be calm, like not look calm, but actually be calm, right? Like that's now I actually take that on. I'm like, I can look calm, but I know I actually know how to be calm, right? So I don't stuff things down
It's a
anymore.
big
And so
difference. Yeah.
yeah, it's a big difference. And the mindfulness has given me the gift of being present to like what I want and need in my life. So it's through my personal work with a mindfulness coach that I invested in. I've created my business to be something that suits me as the principal. Like I'm the principal in my life, right? Like I need my life to work. And so I needed to do things that fed me and filled me up and that allowed me to serve in ways that I didn't feel exhausted, so exhausted that I couldn't serve my family. So if that makes sense. So that's why I run these more digital experiences, because I can do it from anywhere in the world. I can be with my kids and still serve people in the way that I know is healing, even though it's not all one-on-one anymore. And I have a team of people who care. And so that's what I'm doing today, is running these mindfulness and movement experiences and running these education classes for those with permanent wounds.
Yeah, that Teresa, that's an amazing, story. Your book is incredible, and I would recommend that everybody get the book. And like me, you're going to read it in 2 days. I couldn't put it down. It was that good. I picked it up and referenced it a couple times. Absolutely, this
But
is
you got
it
all
right
the
here.
notes in it, yeah.
Great book.
I was
But
blonde once. That's another fact. My college days, late
but
college days, I should say. That picture was like 5 years ago, so not too long ago.
you know something the last few things you were talking about, you know, reminded me of balance, right? Trying to achieve balance. I don't think there is a balance. I think it's a struggle, but I think once you realize that you're never going to be balanced, that you have to work to manage those things smartly, like you have done. You've put a process together in your life that helps you direct you so you can manage these things
Hmm.
and assign the appropriate time and effort to these things that you do to make yourself present and available
Yeah.
so that you can make those decisions, that you have a choice, and that you're bringing the importance of family into this. So many people miss that until they're older. They feel I've got to perform, I've got to work. They're workaholics and they come home and they're tired and they don't give time to their wife or their husband or their kids. When they come home, they don't want to go on vacation because when they get time off, they're tired. They just want to regenerate. And so when you don't have that strive for trying to get balance, even though you're never going to make it, but if you don't figure out how all these pieces work and how they move back and forth on the board and how to manage those things, life is hard, and it leads to bad choices, and it leads to, a lot of regrets in life. And that's the thing that I find so incredibly uplifting about who you are and what you present. No one's perfect. You always, as I said earlier, you're always talking about how you're striving to to learn and to be better, and that we're all on this path together and learning. And what I find so remarkable about you and John McCaskill and your folks is that you guys care. You know, you're doing a lot of good stuff and you give a damn, you know,
Yeah.
and that's why you're doing what you're doing and you're impacting so many people. And I'm just so proud to be, on the peripheral seeing what you guys are doing and knowing that you're impacting folks and you're making a difference in their lives, especially with these veterans and other folks that are disabled because their life changes so dramatically. And just like when you transition from the military, you're not the same person. You change. Well, obviously you change when you have, disabilities. It changes you in different ways.
Yep.
And having people there that are on the other side of that with their arms extended saying, we understand some of this and we can help you. We can help you physically, we can help you mentally, spiritually. That's just such a huge thing to offer people.
Yeah.
And something else you said, and I want to make sure I understood, the folks, the veterans that are coming in your program, you said there's a path for them through the VA to apply VA dollars to get training at no cost to them, correct?
So so we have a VA grant through the Adaptive Sports Grant that the class makes the class that we provide here in San Diego. If you're here in San Diego, the class is at CrossFit 1904. It's a functional fitness class. It is free for veterans. And the initial course that's on our website under education is also free for veterans. And then, we do take Tri-West insurance. So Dr. Megan, who's on my team, sees a lot of the virtual and one-on-one patients.
Right.
If they need. So that's also nice, is that we do take veteran insurance if needed. But with the mindfulness experience, there's the veteran does pay for it. But there is ways. What we've had actually individuals do and organizations is pay forward spots for veterans who can't afford it. So it's
have a sponsor thing then.
Yeah, so it's nice where you can pay for your own and then pay it forward to someone that you want to grant the experience to.
Right.
So
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's the nice thing. And I would like to expand upon the balance piece too, because I have a little bit of time too. I could probably talk to you guys all day because I love talking to you.
Hey, before you do that, I want to kind of get back to I've worked in nonprofits. I ran a nonprofit for about 3 years. The very fact that you're providing a service and the level of service you're providing at no cost to the person taking on the course as a veteran is huge. It's priceless because that opens the door. Now, they're not paying money out of the pocket, but it's a benefit that they have. So, the VA is paying for it, but it's an enabler to get them into your course. And then the light comes on and they're able to find, a part of themselves that maybe they thought was lost, right? But the fact that you guys are doing this at no cost, that's got to be something that folks know and understand is a huge value. Because people are always saying, hey, who are these folks that are interfacing with veterans? There's the wall kind of comes up because they wonder, what's the intent here? Is this a money-making thing?
Yeah.
Do they have the interest of veterans at heart? You guys obviously do, but I just want to beat the drum on the fact that you guys have some courses that get folks in at no cost to them. That's a big deal. And, that the other piece of that is the sponsor piece. The more folks that, see and understand what you're doing and that resonates with them, how do they connect with you if they want to, donate money to what you guys are doing to enable more veterans to come in?
So the way they can do it is, one is email us directly, which is wellness@movement-rx.com, or, go to our website and there's the mindfulness experience at the top, and you can click on that and you can see how to pay it forward when you go to register. Now the thing that we are working on, because we just launched our second experience and we are going to launch our third in September. What we're going to be doing is offering an ability for people to come to the webinar that we teach. It's like the kickoff kind of information. It's not a sales webinar. It's like an information about mindfulness and how it applies to the way you eat, how the way you move. It's very informative. It's actually really fun. John and I teach it. We're making that free. So when that becomes available, we're tinkering with, do we have just a sole veteran group that we bring in to give them, basically it's showing people what's possible. And if they want to continue on in the experience, great. If they don't, they'll get enough from this webinar that will give them a chance to get started, which is really the key, is giving people a chance to see what's possible. But if you want, email us wellness@movement-rx.com, or go to the mindfulness experience on movementrx.com and see their pay it forward option there.
Absolutely. And that's something that, obviously we're recording this, and we're going to wind up posting this on YouTube under the Power of Our Story. And then we'll also have a link that we'll put on LinkedIn, so
Yeah.
try to get this out as much as possible. And if you can just shoot me a DM with that information, I'll make sure I attach that in the text of what we put out, so that it'll draw attention to folks there too. They might not have time to watch the whole video in one setting, but at least they can see that right away. All right. That'll be kind of baked into what we send out. So
yeah, I can do that.
I think that's huge that you guys are, that you got that right. I mean, it's so important that you guys figured that piece out, and that there are folks out there that want to help. And this is a great way to help folks. So,
well, it's like I said, this work, it's been a journey to get to a place where the work is really like, it feeds us in a way, like our souls, like, it stimulates my intellectual aspect of my mind, right? Too, like it forces me to think of how to get creative to really help people where they're at. But it's running a business has been one of the best personal developers for me too. After getting, going through all of the rehab I did, and then starting my business, it wasn't just like peaches and cream, and rainbows. From the start, I was up against, I made some not so great decisions that, changed the story. Those were just growth decisions. I made some decisions that made me grow. And I learned what I didn't want first. Yeah. And now I'm finally with a team and a group of people, and on a platform like LinkedIn, of people who get it, because it hasn't always been the case. And so I'm very grateful for that. And I think the pandemic really took the workaholic in me out, like you said. So, oftentimes with addiction, you can transfer it to something else. And I got really obsessed with my work for a little while. So much so that it impacted the way I was with my family. And really, just before the pandemic, when I got pregnant with my second child, was like I had to stop and just slow down, like really slow down. And it forced me to pay attention to the painful things that were coming up, the changes in my business, and really think about what I wanted in my business. I'd done a lot of that personally, mindfully, but like I did it, but I wasn't really applying it all the time. And so finally, I think this last year was a huge change for everyone, but it really impacted my business in a good way, in a sense that it gave it focus. It gave it a little more purpose, bringing people in that believed in the same vision, and gave me a way forward that really does serve me with my family as a mother and as a businesswoman working to make a difference in this world of wellness. Like, where do we fit in that world? Well, we fit right into it, no problem. And actually, even if we didn't see us fitting in, that's a good thing. Like, we're providing something that's needed on all fronts of someone's health. So,
well, Theresa, I tell you, like you said, we could probably talk for a number of hours, but I'm looking at my, last week I blew it because I was just so into what I was discussing about history of our founders that I lost track of time. But so right now we're at, about an hour and 27 minutes. About 5 minutes of that was, talking on the front end, but we've been into the weeds and getting into your story in a good way. And so what I want to do is I want to talk just on something real quick, and then we'll stop recording, and then we can, open it up to folks that might be on who could have questions for you. And if not, if you want to talk to that balance piece, we can chat about that real quick.
Sure.
So I would absolutely like to have you on down the road to talk, to kind of focus in on transitioning from military into a business and some of the things that the do's and don't do's to help folks that are, in that part of that journey of their life now. They're leaving the military, they're trying to figure out, hey, what the heck am I going to do? Some folks want to be an entrepreneur. So you've got a lot to talk about. So maybe at some point down the road, we could do that too, if you've got
Sure.
time and would be interested.
It'll be a book
So,
one day. I guarantee.
what's that?
It'll be another book. I want to write another book
I
about
bet.
business.
I
Oh my
bet.
gosh, the things I've learned.
Yeah. So in closing us out, I just want to say how proud I am of you as a Marine, as a mom, as a wife, as a friend. All the things that you've developed into are incredible. You are a strong woman. I would follow you wherever you would lead, because I know, based on what I've seen, who you are. And I trust that you are going to do the right thing and that you care. And your experience has made you who you are today. The folks that work with you know that, they see that. And it's just so uplifting to see where you've come from and where you are. And, real quick, a part of the book when you meet your husband for the first time. I meant to mention this earlier. And you are reflecting back on that in the book later on. And your husband said that when you were talking to him, what did you think about, because you were putting the guy in a choke and he comes into the room, you were, showing someone how to do a bear.
Joke.
Right. And he said, you had me at when you were choking that guy. That's what sealed the deal for him with you. I thought that was so funny. And that reminds me of a story with my wife and I that I won't go into. But, your husband is part of this too, obviously.
Yeah.
And so he's got to be a strong guy, across the board. But I know that he enables your success too. So I did want to mention, that he is part of what you're doing too. When I finish things like this, oftentimes I'll talk to my wife and then I realize, I probably should have said something about her, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, but
Yeah, no, it's very true. Like he is, I got my whole family in town this last weekend, which never happens. And I share this with everyone, like he has given me a chance to really pursue my dreams and helped me, because in a marriage, I mean, it is really important to be with someone. I don't think we sometimes know that when you first get married, right? But like running a business and pursuing your dreams, really, the other person matters a ton with that, because they can poo-poo it or also cheer you on. And I think we've come a long way in our communication and just like our love for each other and respect that we've come to a place where I just feel completely supported, and it hasn't been easy. But I wouldn't do it with anyone else because of who he's such a gentle, honest man. And like one of the best, he's just a wonderful father. I mean, yeah. So thank you for saying that, because he is the backbone of our family.
Yeah. Well, you may or may not remember, but I made a comment in one of your posts that he's an example of what a man should be. He really is. Being a man in today's environment and how things are a little different now. We're all trying to find our way here as a nation together, but men are an integral part of our society in the role that they play as husbands and as fathers. There's no replacement for that. And I love seeing you talk about him in your post, and when you share some of your personal stories with your boys, it shows a whole nother personal side of you and that dynamic of who you are as a person and as a professional. And that's just you're just doing great stuff. So all right, well, for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and conclude this. Dr. Larson or Theresa, thank you so much for coming on board with us. I look forward to, having you on again in the coming weeks and months. We'll figure that out, what it looks like.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Scott and
No,
Sarah, for having me.
absolutely. And so I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now. And folks that want to ask questions here, we'll have some bit of time to do that. So thank you all also for taking part in this today. So let me stop the recording.